Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Welcome, everybody. It is time for the Books That Make You show, and I am your host, Desiree Duffy. And today, we're going to talk about books that make you enter the immersive internet and become its slave. Technology is oh so cool, right? I mean, we can spend hours playing video games, first-person shooter, role-playing games. Entire storylines are in there. Animal Crossing, Second Life, World of Warcraft, just hanging out on social media with our friends, Zooming with our friends, Clubhouse, right? And what about making passive income by allowing someone to use our computers to mine Bitcoins? Whatever that is, we make money and we have fun. We don't have to do too much about it. That whole VR and AR thing, just add that into the mix. The internet is so amazing, isn't it? We don't lose anything because of it. Not our free will, our autonomy, our souls. Nope. Enter Edgar Scott, author of the dystopian novel 418, I Am a Teapot. Now, Edgar is an economist-turned computer scientist. For over 20 years, he served as a senior database administrator, development operations team manager in financial, the cryptocurrency world, medical industries, as well as with startups. And his experiences taught him that people's limited beliefs often keep them prisoners in a life that they don't necessarily want to live. And that's the theme in his book. It resonates because in 418, well, I'm not going to get into all the gory details. I want Edgar to do that. Edgar, born up in Houston. He was born in Houston. He grew up in Canada, and he now resides in South Florida with his wife, where he explores the real cost of technology on humanity in the future. Edgar, hi, welcome.
Well, hello, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. It makes me sound very well versed in what I'm talking about. I also work for a web hosting company, and let me tell you, computers everywhere.
Oh, I bet. So you're the computer guy, but the thing is you're such a thinker. So you've distilled what you've learned in the working world into this book, and the premise is so tantalizing. Let's get the rundown. Can you describe this world of 418, please?
Sure. On the surface, it's an awfully fun world. We have, it's an extension of where we're going with technology right now. It's not too far away. We have our devices, we have our glasses, we have our headphones, we have our masks that we wear that we can, the video display masks that we can wear to see and feel all at the same time what's going on. So I just took that and I turned the whole system into an immersive internet. But it does mean that we got to put a little chip in your head. The benefit of that is that instead of having to wear headphones or glasses or something like that, we can just stimulate those parts of your brain that require it. So you get to see what it is to be, in the shark tank at the aquarium, and you don't have to worry about getting bitten. You get to feel what it's like to be in Antarctica, and you don't have to go there. And you can turn the cold off, right? You could do anything you want. You can, you could go to Rome. You could compete as in a chariot race. Anything you like, all from the comfort of your own home. You just ask for it, and you get it. And, that's a lot of fun. And
yeah,
I mean, I would love to do that. But the problem is that, well, you got a chip in your head. Mm-hmm. And there's an expense that comes with that. And this is where technology gets expensive. You put a chip in your head, you got to be able to interact with it. If you can interact with it, that means that there's a program. If there's a program, that means it has to be loaded. If it's loaded, that means there has to be memory. Okay, so there's memory on the chip in your head. Well, if you're on the immersive internet and you don't ever want to come off, because who would want to, you got to pay for your lifestyle, so we can make you do work. And that's where the problem begins, because now we can program you to do job tasks that you won't even know you're doing, which is fantastic, because who has not had a boring day at work where you just go home and you just say, I never want to do that again. But you got to the next day, because that's how you make a living.
Yep.
So in one way, we can phrase the technology as freeing you, but in the other way, it actually ties you down.
Yeah.
Have I explained too much here?
No, this is great.
Okay.
So, and this is a world, this isn't necessarily where you're uploaded into a virtual world. You're here in the world, the computer, the chip is in your brain. So you're doing all these things in the real world, awful, terrible things. But in your mind's eye, I guess, you're having a great time.
You're having a great time. You don't experience what you're doing for work. So we can have you pick up the garbage, and you don't have to scrape that unmentionable thing off the pavement. You won't even see it. You won't know how much you smell. We could have you work at the nuclear plant. You won't know that you're marching into the atomic reactor, because you will be completely unaware. And so you become the tools to get things done. And now that's great in that, we can, from a just a simply scientific management point of view, we can program you to do just about anything, and we can keep the cost down. But the problem is that if you're online all the time, what do we pay you? And if we pay you, where do we pay you? Since you're online all the time. So we probably pay you online, and we probably pay you in virtual dollars. The problem is that those virtual dollars may not be good in the real world. And since you're online all the time, and if you need something, you just simply ask the program, you say something like, I'm not feeling good, I need to go to the doctor. The program will have you taken to the doctor. You never need to come offline. You become this automaton of a worker.
Yeah.
And you're effectively unpaid.
Yeah.
And that is a very frightening thing for the rest of us.
Yeah. And so this is what you mean by true slavery being passively accepting the roles that have been presented to us. Is that what?
That is one interpretation of it. I like to say that for most people not on the immersive internet, but when we accept the roles that are presented to us, which is things like what we are told that we are supposed to do from the time we're small children, and we never say, is this what I want to do? That actually is the slavery that I'm really getting at. This is an extreme version of that. So, if I probably myself should have been some sort of white collar professional, but for whatever reason, that never happened to me. I ended up in economics. I did not end up being a lawyer or what have you. And so, if I had done that and been unhappy with it, and many people are, then they spend their entire lives just working to get to the point where they can retire. And that's another theme that I wanted to get to. And that's also a form of that kind of confinement. If you work your entire life just to retire, well, why would you do that? Well, what's going to happen when you retire? Well, you get to do all the things that you love. Okay. Well, why not do them now?
Right.
I've heard it from several writers. I want to retire and then start writing. Well, why not do it now? Because when you retire, that'll be 20 years from now. So you've missed out on 20 years of writing, and you'll be 20 years closer to the time that you pass away. So you'll have less time to what you see. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's not a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and we are fed this notion that this is what we're supposed to do, especially in the West, especially in America. Our Puritan backgrounds have a very virtuous look at working. And providing for the family. All of those things are highly valued. I mean, it's interesting. If you go to other countries, it's kind of rude to ask, what do you do for a living when you meet somebody at a cocktail party? That's the first thing we ask here in the US, because we're ingrained in this notion that we must work and the reward is coming. And really, that's an allegory for what your book is. In the real world, the corporations do this by dangling that carrot. In your world, in a way, are they nicer because of the fact that they're giving you this illusion and you're happy now, rather than making you realize that you're a slave, that you're doing all this nasty stuff? I mean, in a way, they would argue that they're doing their workers a favor.
I see what you're saying. And there are people for whom, and this is why in my world, part of becoming part of that, we effectively have created a working class that is online all the time. And in order to give them a name that works, I think everyone would probably just call them staff. And so I have. So if you wanted to become staff, you can voluntarily choose to do it. Those are probably the only people who should ever be staff. Because everybody else has been coerced into it through one form or another. Either they were, in my world, they were born into it, or through corrections, or through indebtedness. They were pushed into it. And so, either of those, any of those other three are a form of repressing people. And when we say you'll get to work until retirement and we promise somebody, we're lying. And in 418, it's very definitely so that retirement is not a lot of fun. But too many people. My father was a doctor, and he would often see people who had worked their entire lives in order to retire. And shortly after they retired, they stopped doing things. And shortly after they stopped doing things, they died.
Yeah.
And so if you're not doing what you love right now, you're asking for it.
Right. You have no guarantee of the future, just like our friend here.
Our friend, 418, George, as I like to call him. Depends where you are in the novel.
Let's talk about him a little bit. So we've set the stage. What's going on with him? What's happening with poor George?
Poor George. Well, George is like most of us. We are born into our situations, and we usually, we've heard the phrase, "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." Sons of doctors become doctors, or children of doctors become doctors. Children of lawyers do the same thing. Children of actors become actors. We seem to be cast into a lot. There's reasons why that happens. The parents know how to support the children going into it, but there's also an expectation. In 418's case, he is born into the staff class. He has no choice. But what we've done is we've used the internet to break apart the family unit. We're no longer the nuclear family. We are the internet family. The nuclear family, we used to complain that, mother and father went to work and the kids went to daycare, and did they really see each other except for mealtime? Well, now we have tablets and devices. We don't even see each other when it's mealtime, because we're probably, how many times do we take our phone to the dinner table? And have you had dinner recently without tapping it at least once? We get into that. So my character, George, was born into this. So he is unaware, and everything is fine until the unthinkable happens, which is self-driving car accident. Because, that'll never happen. And why did I pick on self-driving cars? Self-driving cars are great. I know they're coming. They're gonna, we're all gonna have one, and probably it'll be safer because there's a lot of fatalities. We don't need that. But I do enjoy driving a car. I will be sad if the day comes when I cannot. But he has this accident. He has a head injury, And what that has done is he is now a little damaged.
Mm-hmm.
But aren't we all a little damaged? And he starts to not see things the way they were. First, he's jolted out of his routine by the fact that the person who he knew as his wife doesn't know who he is anymore and thinks he's dead. And there's no way for him to explain it to her, because it's not possible in that world to come back from the dead. That's kind of like this world too. And so he's knocked out of his situation, and he goes on a quest to find out what has happened. How can I fix it? And then he starts to realize that everything that he had online, because it was all virtual, and I try to do great justice to describing how little he actually has in possessions, is meaningless. He really has nothing. He lives in an 8x8 cubicle, 19 floors under the ground. And we wouldn't even imagine that. And we would think that that's a jail cell. But he doesn't even question that. And he never uses that verbiage, because to him, that's exactly acceptable. And so it's about him trying to figure out the world with no guide. And he reaches out to the only person who will answer him, who actually is his manager. And his manager has his own problems. So the two of them go off on their trip to rehumanize themselves and to find a solution to this ever-growing, unfortunately, the staff class is ever-growing. It's driving the economy. People are being pushed into the staff class so that we can keep the economy rolling, because we're no longer developing technology. We can do it by having cheaper labor. And so there's a great push to make more people into staff. And his manager is in danger of being forced to become staff. And so the two of them have to work together to break out of that class system. That's the story.
I love this story. I love the book. And I like the way it just is so reflective of what we have in our current world. And the economy is driven by that working class. We need those people doing those things. But as things happen, automation, robotics, all of the technologies that are here to save us are potentially also going to enslave us. Would you?
Correct.
Yeah.
One of the first jobs I had as a computer job was to write a software program that managed inventory for a small computer company that did very specialized sales. I would manage the inventory and print shipping labels and things like that. And once I got that done, they fired the shipper. And I feel terrible. But that was my job, and I understand why she didn't like me very much. But, we do have these problems with technology coming along and taking the jobs that we had. The thing that we must be able to do is to be able to look at what technology is and to see how we need to move in order to take advantage of it, or in order to use it and survive within it. If we continue to do the same things that we did yesterday, technology will come and obsolete what we're doing. And the value of doing something obsolete is nothing. And that's a problem certainly within the United States, where we have people who, the jobs that they used to have, the manufacturing jobs that they used to have, are gone because we don't need those goods anymore. They need to shift to something else, but it's very difficult to do that. And I'm not going to say it's easy. The solution is not straightforward, but we do have to realize that we have to reevaluate and make some hard decisions that way and help. We have to help each other.
Yeah, that's the core, right? If we help each other, there's a united front that we can take, and hopefully, you don't want people like that to get left behind, I guess, is the core of it. If somebody's job has been replaced by manufacturing, help them find something else to do. And people should want to be adaptive too. I always kind of wonder about people who rail against technology. If their industry is shifting and changing, I feel that we ourselves should probably find ways to adapt so that we don't make ourselves obsolete.
I love what you just said. I love technology, and I'm wary of it at the same time.
Yeah.
I love my iPhone, and I love my new computers and all that good stuff. And I love playing with programs, and you know, what I did in university, I can now do with a simple little program on my laptop. You know, the kind of statistical regressions that I used to do.
Yeah.
What used to take months now takes hours. And so that's great. That's progress. The problem is that if that's all I ever learned to do, so we have to be, you know, it is for each of us, it is our own personal choice to see these things as potentially beneficial or potentially, the word escapes me, but not beneficial is not the right word, but, you know, yeah, where something has come along and effectively taken away our lunchbox. Well, it really isn't the case. The lunchbox just moved over there and you just have to go get it. But what's in the lunchbox will be better if you can do that. So, you know, we can have more now. I have had a number of those jobs that I had 418 do. I have worked in a metal factory, and I chose not to do that after a while because it's a great job. I know lots of people who do that. I still do know a dear friend of mine was my boss, and I was his boss for a while too, and he's still doing it. And it's hard on him, you know, physically it's hard on him. He's
now
still doing the same job.
Is that kind of relationships, you know, when you've been managing people and people have been managing you, because that's really, that's the buddies in the book.
Yeah.
You know, did that come into play when you were writing?
Yes, it does. Truly, when you're a good manager, yes, you do have a position where you are the authority who has the say over another person, but you have to treat them like a human being. And until you do treat your employees as humans and realize that you're very little removed from them, you won't be very good at it. Mm-hmm. Now, there are ways to appear to be good at it, and that's by beating them up and abusing them, and you make them work very hard, and then you end up firing, and you end up with high turnover. But when you work with people, you end up with lower turnover, and you get somewhere. So a wonderful saying I've heard is that if you want to go somewhere fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. You get a lot farther as a group. And so in 418, who he has a name, but his manager, Brian, doesn't even know his name. And how many employee relationships do we have where we may be the boss and we don't even know the name of the person who works for us? Yeah. You know, Sandra or Susan or Shania, we just don't know. And so he has to come to realize that before he can solve his own problem. Technology also allows us to take on this idea that we're impersonal and that we're, you know, there really is no anonymity on the internet. When you think that nobody knows what you posted, that's not true, but most people don't.
Right.
But it can be found. So yeah, be very careful with anything that you would say, because we get this idea that we're anonymous, but what that does is it leads to people saying things that they wouldn't have said otherwise, and behavior that wouldn't have been acceptable, and behavior that is not beneficial to society as a whole. And so what we've got in 418 is we've got the extreme of this. We have people so broken up that 418 doesn't actually have any friends. None. He lives absolutely alone, and his wife and children don't know him anymore. And in a beautiful little twist in the book, he's never actually physically met his wife.
Oh,
And so he has to be introduced to her in the real world
yeah,
because he's only ever met her online,
yeah.
and she doesn't look the same. We can get lost. And so I wanted to say that in the book, is that we can get lost online.
Absolutely. And
being
you
authentic
do.
is very important.
Yeah, you do. You absolutely bring that out in this book. There's twists and there's turns and there's things that just kind of like give you tingles when you think about it, like you just said about him not actually knowing his wife in real life. Let's switch gears just a little bit. I wanna throw one thing at you really fast. Just say love it, hate it. Okay.
Okay.
Bitcoin. Cryptocurrency.
I dislike it.
Okay.
I'm an economist and I see it as a store of value, but I don't see it as an investment vehicle, which people like to say it is.
Right. Okay. A little bit of writing advice, if you could, or just tell us a little bit, because you have a certain approach, scaffolding. Can you tell us what that means?
That is my own graphic way of understanding that if I'm going to build a story, I can't build the whole building from the ground up with no waste. If you want to paint the Sistine Chapel, you aren't going to go up there with suction cups and paint. You're going to build a scaffolding inside the chapel so that you can paint. The scaffolding is important. It probably has to be built first, so that you can understand what the building is that you're trying to create. So scaffolding writing is writing that. You must write in order to understand your novel, and you know full well when you write it that you're going to throw it away.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Any writing advice, tips for somebody who wants to get into writing anything, but specifically dystopian or anything that involves technology?
Well, the first thing that I would say is don't be afraid to be shameless. And what I mean by that is don't be afraid to be terrible. You may have an idea. 418 did not start without scaffolding writing. And some of the writing that I wrote turned out to be scaffolding after I wrote it. And so in order to get there, I had to write down many ideas. And I don't know if I actually had them on paper on my desk, but because I had written them, they were up here and they became the story. So don't be afraid of that. Here's the trick. Do some writing, do some reading. Come back and read your own writing. So when you write a few chapters and then go back and read them before you're finished, because it will help you find what you intended to write, because the intention of what you're writing may not actually be conscious to you. You want to write something that's a dystopia, but you didn't know you actually did. You start writing about some aspect and you were unaware that that's actually what inside you wanted to write about. So the intention will come out to you when you edit and you see, why am I talking about this? And now you can direct your future chapters towards that goal. Have a goal, but understand that it may change.
That is excellent advice. By the way, I like the teapot behind you.
Yes. Yes. That is a very functional teapot. It only holds 2 cups, so I have a larger one. Nice. And it's good for loose leaf tea. Good for this. Right now, it's sort of about 7 o'clock where I am, so it's a good time for a cup of tea to wind down before the evening.
Yes, likewise. That's what I have right here.
Yeah, I love it. And
the name. Let's talk about the name. For somebody who might not be familiar with 418, I am a teapot. Do you want to reveal what that comes from?
It was an internet joke. It was an April Fool's joke. And all of these internet web protocols have response codes. So anytime you're surfing on the internet, you're probably throwing up a bunch of 100s. And you're throwing up a bunch of maybe 302s because you've already seen that before. And every now and then you hit a 404, which is page not found. And you might have hit a 500, which is an internal server error, and a 501, which is a bad gateway. and a 429, which means you didn't have authorization. And 418 was originally a joke, which was to say, the internet has become such a wide place that you really can't tell what you're connecting to anymore. And web servers are now no longer physical machines. They may just be services running on a machine on a certain port. They could just be written in Go or Python, whatever, and you don't know. And all it's got to do is what it's got to do. So we connect to the theoretical coffee pot and ask it to brew, and it responds, 418, I am a teapot. You can't do that.
I'm not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that.
Excellent.
So I figured, if you could be programmed to be anything, you might as well be a teapot. And in my world, you wouldn't even know it.
Yeah. And you'd enjoy it because you'd be a teapot that's out there hanging out at casinos and seeing the world, living the lifestyle.
Seeing the world.
Exactly.
And whatever that may mean to you. But, one of the things in my world is that maybe, people stop. They don't interact with each other, so they don't have quite the imagination. So what they do is actually fairly dull and boring. And that's very sad. When we look at the internet, we often don't use it for what it could be used for, which is actually fantastic and amazing.
We use it
for
to
very
look
simple things.
Yeah, looking up cat videos, for example. That's how
I do like cat videos.
And I know you do. Okay, Edgar Scott, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody really quick where they can find you online.
Yes, I can be found at edgarscottwrites.com. That's my website. My book is for sale and on a number of the platforms, Amazon. I can be found on Twitter. I'm Edgar Scott, and Instagram, Edgar Scott Writes. And I will be happy to see any of you. Follow me, send me a message. It's all good.
Thank you so much, Edgar Scott, for joining us on the Books That Make You show. This has been an immersive experience for us all.
I hope not, actually. A teapot is a wonderful thing because I can just unplug.
Exactly. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here today on the Books That Make You show. Once again, my name is Desiree Duffy, and you can find us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Sign up for the newsletter. We're always doing bookish fun things, giveaways. We have book news and information for you to check out. Until next time, all of my bibliophile friends, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.